Hi, I'm Donna from Evoker, and in today's video we'll be focusing on how to create the shirt of our character. So start by opening up your file and selecting the faces that will be around the shirt area. Obviously you don't want to drop down below the belt, so we'll just select the faces here. So you're not going to get the perfect shape, we'll reshape that later, but we just want to get the base to start. So to make sure we check around the back of the model to make sure that we've got all the faces selected that we need. Okay, and once we're happy with that, we can hide our pants to make sure that we've got enough below there in order to create the shape. So we'll just get rid of these ones, we don't need these. And now we can extrude our shirt a little bit to clone it. So just holding shift and using the scale tool to scale out just a little bit. Make sure you clone to object. And then we'll apply our push modifier. Okay, once we're happy with how far away that is from the body, we'll change the mesh color just so we can differentiate from the skin, and we can start to stretch the material across the chest. So we'll do that by deleting some of the faces between the breasts. So just selecting these ones here. Just having a look around to get a better idea of where the material would stretch from, and then I'm just going to select these edges and bridge to stretch the material across. So we'll continue to do that to close the gap. And then we'll connect these edges to add geometry in between so we can join them up to the rest of the shirt. So we'll just tweak some of these as well, just so we can simulate the fabric pulling across the chest area. Since it's a rather tight shirt, it's going to be pulling quite a bit. So we'll need to add another edge loop here and on the other side as well, so we have enough geometry to join, and then we can just weld our verts together to close the gap. So again, just tweaking the verts to get the shape that we want. Small adjustments in space. The base has already been created, so we're only just filling in gaps here, and we'll need to fill in the hole down the bottom here as well. So we'll have to delete some of these edges as well, so it's pulling across the bottom properly. But just like the top, we'll delete the edges and then just bridge the gap, adding geometry and edge loops where needed. We can switch into X-ray mode to make sure that we can see through to see what we're doing. This time I just used target weld instead of normal weld, so There's a lot of different ways of doing things when you model, so just find the way that's easiest for you. And then just tweaking the shape again. So just checking to make sure I'm looking at the overall shape, so we can get rid of this under edge crease here that was defining the bottom of the breast, since the shirt obviously you wouldn't see that unless she has it tucked up underneath her breast, which is highly unlikely. And then we'll just pull these verts out again. So this is still an extremely tight shirt. Normally you would loosen the material quite a bit. So I'm just going to remove the furrow of her belly as well, so we don't see that as much through the shirt. And we'll just continue to tweak and check the overall shape as we're going. Make sure that we do not have edge constraint on when we're moving our vertices around. And of course, since we've added edges, we'll need to fix the smoothing groups as well. So we can see now that the shirt is coming together. It's pulling across the chest. We'll continue on by deleting half of our shirt, so we only have to work on the one side, and we can clone and use symmetry while we do this. We'll clone at a later date, obviously, and use symmetry while we're modeling. So just adjusting the verts around where the collar would be, so making the basic shape of the shirt. So this will be the base of the collar. So I've got my reference up beside me to make sure that I've got getting the idea of the shirt that she has underneath her vest. I'm just tweaking verts. Okay, don't forget the back of the model. So bring the collar up a little bit, because it is usually higher on the back of our neck. And make sure that the material is pulling across the back as well, just like we did with the chest, except we don't have to delete faces, we can just move them out. So just tweaking. Just moving the verts to make sure that the shape that we get is what we want. So rounding off the armhole. So she's wearing kind of like a tank top. We're not going to worry about sleeves, since obviously you can't see any from underneath the vest. So she's obviously wearing some sort of tank top. So I'm just going to remove the body now so I can round off the armhole. We can bring the body back later to make sure that it doesn't clip through. Once we're happy with that, we can bring back our symmetry so we can see what it looks like overall, and start cutting in some of the folds between the chest area. So we won't have too many folds across here, so these are mostly stretch folds that are created here, because the shirt is so tight, so we want to keep them to a minimum. We just want to show that the shirt is pulling. So just like we did with the pants, just cutting in edges and then tweaking to create the dips and the folds. Now obviously, since we're working with symmetry, these folds will be symmetrical, but we can break that up when we can either sculpt the detail, or when we clone our mesh over, we can adjust the vertices so that it is less symmetrical. So just making sure I weld that vert, because there was a double vert there, so that pinching that was being created. Is usually a sign of extra vertices. So just putting a turbo smooth on now so I can see what it looks like smoothed, so where the shadows and the highlights are falling. I'm going to clone it across now so I can remove the symmetry and make sure our verts are welded down the center on a very small threshold, and then just small adjustments, since now we'll have to do it on both sides of the mesh. So now we can just remove a little bit of the symmetry between, on the chest area, sorry, between the breasts. It doesn't have to be a lot, so it can be just a little bit. It's just so it isn't perfectly symmetrical. I'm just going to add another cut here. And down underneath. Make sure this one is welded correctly, and then I'll adjust the vertices. Okay, I think that's starting to look pretty good, so I'll just do a few more little adjustments. And just lower this a little bit so it's not tucked up there so much. And bringing these down just a little bit with my edge constraint on so that the shape is the same. So I'm not really adjusting the shape, I'm just evening out the edges a little bit. There we go. Maybe just one more cut here. Just to pull this in a little bit. Yep. That looks good. So we're getting some nice pull folds between the chest area. So just using X-ray sometimes when I can't find the vertice that I want. And that's just Alt X on the keyboard. I'm pretty happy with that. So now to start the bottom of the shirt, we're going to bring back the belt, and we'll snap the edges of the bottom of the shirt to the top of the belt. So this is where it'll weld when we create our game character, we'll be able to weld these vertices together. So we're just going to snap these up to the shirt. So we're going to have to adjust some of the geometry on the belt, I think, by the look of it, just so it's in line more with the actual shirt. So if I go back to the belt and into edge mode, I can collapse to get rid of this one, or actually it might just be best to grab the loop and delete that, so holding Control and backspace to get rid of the vertices as well. And we can collapse this edge here and bring it back into line, just lining them up a little bit more with the actual shirt edge loops. So making sure that we're not clipping with the pants, we can bring that back as well. Just moving these into position. And collapsing when we need to. Probably collapse that edge on the shirt, so we can just leave that one there. We don't need the triangle at the base of that shirt. So now I've done one side, so I'll just delete the side that I haven't done and mirror this so we don't have to do it again. Add the symmetry though, we want to remove some of these edges, so just selecting this edge ring, and same with the bottom one. We'll select that and convert it to, we'll collapse it, might be easier actually, and then we'll get this ring and select it to faces and delete those edges. So because that won't be seen, we'll just get rid of them now. It'll make our life easier, and then we can just tweak some of these a little bit more. Just checking to make sure nothing is clipping. Okay, and I'll clone and flip that. I'll mirror it. Okay, so when we cloned, it's a little bit, the pivot point was a little bit off center, so I'll just go back in, undo that, and adjust the pivot point to 0 out on the X, and then clone and mirror it. And just weld these verts together. It seemed we had a duplicate of the belt there, so I just deleted that. Okay. Just making sure the front verts are welded as well. I'm not going to worry about that clipping. Well, we can bring it out a little bit, I think. There we go. Okay, so now once that's done, we can go back to snapping our verts to the edge of the belt and the top edge of the belt. So you can always go into wireframe mode to make sure you can grab the right vertice. So just getting rid of that triangle too. So that, just snapping the bottom at the moment. We can fix any other parts of the mesh later. Just going around the model and snapping verts. Okay, once that's done, we can turn off our pants and the belt again, and we can finish working with our shirt. So we're going to start by continue on by creating the folds around the tuck, so where the shirt is tucked into the belt, into the pants. So I'm just going to bring this bottom edge loop that is closest to the belt down and to bring it out so it's kind of making a puff over the belt. So this will be the start, I guess, of our folds. So we don't have to do it all the way around. Obviously, we don't want it to be all the same all the way around the model. So I'm just bringing back the concept too, just to show how it's having a look at how it's falling around the base of the belt. So now I can start cutting in some of the folds. So just the same as what we did with the pants and the chest area of the shirt. So just cutting in and pushing and pulling the verts to create the fold areas. So bringing these back and pulling a few forward. A lot of small adjustments. Making sure that we look at multiple angles around the model, not limiting ourselves just to one viewport or one view of the model. Okay, I might turn my turbo smooth back on now so I can have a look. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So don't forget to save. Save regularly, as often as possible. And then we'll just continue to look around the model. Make sure I'm happy with the shape before moving on. Okay, so now I'm going to start on the collar. I'm just going to select this edge loop and extrude up. I'll bring back the body to make sure that it sits nicely. So just again making sure I look at my reference to make sure I get this close to the concept, and then just scaling and moving these in. Grabbing the edge loop here, moving it down a little bit just to make sure it sits with the body. Okay, once I'm happy with that, I can select the faces, and I'll extrude a little bit actually. I'll extrude by polygon, or along the normal actually. It seems to get the better look. So just playing with the settings until I get something that I like. No, I'll undo that, I think it needs a bevel. So just undoing that and applying a bevel. And I'm playing with the settings until I get something that I like. So changing whether or not it's along the local, I'm beveling along the local, and then just playing with the numbers. So just pulling this in towards the neck so it sits flush. Again, we'll actually join these and weld them to the edge there. So I'm just going to select this ring and convert to polygons so I can adjust the smoothing group. And then in my turbo smooth, I'll just make sure that separate by smoothing groups is selected. And then I'll go around and make sure that we haven't got any clipping. And pulling out the vertices where needed. Okay, I'm just going to fix the belt buckle while I've got this open, just pulling it out and rotating a little bit. There we go, our shirt is done.